Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into the really fascinating journey of Mark Carney. We've pulled together material from, biographies, news reports, official profiles, quite a mix. And they all paint this picture of a pretty unique career path. So our mission here is to explore how someone so deeply rooted in global finance, central banking, climbs so fast to Canada's top political job, and what that trajectory means for the challenges he's facing right now. I mean, think about it. A powerful central banker guiding nations through massive crises, now running a country. It's a really unexpected turn, especially for someone who was already like the first non-Brit to head the Bank of England. Quite something.
Yeah, and I think to really get it, you have to look at where he started, his foundations. He was born March 16th, 1965, up in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, grew up in Edmonton, Alberta. So those Canadian roots, they're quite different from, the Londons and New Yorks he ended up in later. It gives him this interesting blend, local grounding, and that big international picture.
And that grounding was paired with some serious academic horsepower, wasn't it? He got his BA in economics from Harvard back in '88, then over to Oxford for an MPhil in '93 and a DPhil, doctorate in economics in '95. How much did that academic background really shape where he went next, do you think?
Oh, profoundly. I mean, really significant. That depth, that academic rigor, it gave him this powerful analytical toolkit. You absolutely need that for navigating complex economics and finance. It meant his approach was always, evidence-based, very rigorous. That served him incredibly well, right, from Wall Street through to the central banks.
Right. So he takes that formidable toolkit and plunges straight into, the high-stakes world of Wall Street. 13 years at Goldman Sachs, that's a long stint, and working across the big hubs, London, Tokyo, New York, Toronto. What kind of experience did that Goldman period really give him, especially thinking about his later move into public service?
Well, you see, that time at Goldman, it wasn't just about deals and transactions. It was about getting this huge international perspective, understanding how global capital markets really work from the inside out. He was dealing with different economies, different regulatory systems all the time. That gives you a kind of real-world education that, frankly, very few central bankers have before they step into public service.
I can
So that hands-on global finance knowledge made his switch particularly impactful. He joined the Bank of Canada as deputy governor in 2003 and then, of course, became governor from 2008 right through to 2013.
And 2008, that puts him right in the hot seat for the global financial crisis. What did he actually do as governor that helped Canada navigate that storm? People often say Canada did better than many other G7 countries.
He deployed some really innovative stuff, actually. Yeah, there were the early interest rate cuts, which were important. But he also famously introduced forward guidance. Now, that wasn't just some technical jargon. It was a really powerful communication strategy. Basically, the central bank clearly signaling what it planned to do with interest rates in the future. Giving that kind of clarity, that predictability, it really helped build confidence for businesses, for consumers, let them plan better. That strategic transparency, it was a key reason Canada bounced back faster. It showed his pragmatic side, managing crises, but also willing to try new things early on.
Okay, so he steers Canada through that. But his journey, as we said, didn't stop there. Maybe the most eye-catching part of his central banking career was across the Atlantic. The historic move becoming the first non-UK national to lead the Bank of England. He was there from July 2013 to March 2020. What was the weight of that appointment? Being an outsider, especially during what turned out to be a pretty critical time for the UK?
Oh, it was immense. Just huge. Being the first non-Brit, well, it potentially let him approach things with a bit more objectivity, maybe. Unburdened by traditional Bank of England ways or old political ties. He kept using that transparent forward guidance on rates, which was familiar territory for him. But his real test was guiding financial stability through two massive, unprecedented challenges back to back. First, all the complexities around Brexit, just enormous uncertainty, and then right at the end of his term, the initial shockwaves of the COVID-19 pandemic. His ability to just keep a steady hand, communicate clearly and consistently through all that chaos, that really cemented his global reputation.
So you look at that path navigating global crises, leading two major central banks. It makes you wonder, what next? And after leaving the Bank of England, he didn't exactly fade away, did he? He took on this pretty significant role as the UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance. That runs from 2020 to 2025. How did that role kind of signal a shift maybe in his focus?
Well, it definitely shows an evolution, I think, a clear shift, moving beyond just traditional monetary policy to tackle these broader systemic global problems. As the UN envoy, his whole focus has been on promoting sustainable investment, mobilizing finance specifically for climate initiatives. It really signals his conviction that you can't separate economic stability from environmental sustainability anymore. And it shows he's committed to using those financial levers, the tools he knows best, to actually fight climate change, not just react to economic downturns.
Which brings us then to the really unexpected leap, the one that caught a lot of people by surprise. Early 2025, suddenly he jumps into Canadian politics, runs for the Liberal Party leadership right after Justin Trudeau stepped down. What was so remarkable about that pivot into politics?
Just the speed of it and how decisive it was. He won that leadership race with, what, over 85% of the vote, just overwhelming support from the party. Then, boom, he becomes MP for Nepean, sworn in as Prime Minister on March 14th, 2025. That kind of rapid rise, from a non-political technocratic background straight to the top job, it's pretty rare in modern politics. Really rare.
And he didn't hang about either. Called a snap federal election almost immediately in April 2025. The result?
Yeah.
A minority government. Got around 44% of the vote, roughly. Now, our sources, the articles and profiles we looked at, they indicate key campaign themes were strong anti-U.S. tariff messaging and a focus on economic nationalism. And just to be clear here, we're reporting what the sources say. We're not endorsing any political viewpoints ourselves, just laying out the information provided.
Right. And his leadership style, as it's often described in these sources, it leans heavily on that calm technocratic presence, emphasizing pragmatic crisis management, economic competence skills he definitely honed as a central banker. And his bilingualism, plus those extensive global finance credentials, they're often cited as real strengths for him in this new role.
But the sources also flag criticisms, don't they? Questions about his political inexperience. I mean, you had done this before. His French fluency sometimes comes up. And also that big challenge. How do you balance economic priorities with environmental ones? That's a tough tightrope. How might those perceived weaknesses affect him, especially trying to lead a minority government?
Look, those are definitely points people are scrutinizing, and fairly so. Running a minority government takes serious political skill, negotiation, compromise. It's a different beast entirely from central banking. And balancing those immediate economic pressures, things like cost of living, with long-term green goals, that requires really deft political handling, a lot of public persuasion. It could be a steep learning curve. He's certainly facing a complex plate of challenges right now as PM.
Yeah.
You've got Canada-U.S. trade tensions flare up again, boosting Canada's economic resilience, the housing affordability crisis, that's huge, tackling climate change commitments, and all of that while needing to constantly build consensus in a minority parliament. It's a tall order.
And for anyone curious about his sort of broader thinking, his 2021 book, Val-US, Building a Better World for All, that's often described as laying out the blueprint for his progressive economic vision. So we've traced this really unique career arc, haven't we? From this global financial strategist guiding economies through storms to a climate action advocate on the world stage. And now, leader of Canada.
Yeah, it really leaves you with a pretty provocative thought, doesn't it? What does it actually mean for a country when its leader comes from such a distinct background, one that's so deeply rooted in global finance and crisis management rather than, say, traditional politics? How might that very specific experience reshape how Canada tackles its challenges and, well, where it heads in the future? Something for you to ponder.